Hi folks, we're going to take a look at a second, slightly more complicated example of solving an equation with fractions. Okay, so again here we see something which is a little more complicated than the other example that I solved, but our goal is still the same. Our goal is still to rewrite this equation so that all the denominators have been removed. Okay, so as before, we need to find the lowest common denominator. So we see denominators of 5, 5, and 10. So clearly the lowest common denominator is going to be 10. Okay, so step one is always to multiply both sides of this equation by that lowest common denominator. Okay, so multiply left by 10 and right by 10. Okay, now we've got several terms on both sides of the equation, so we're going to have to distribute on both sides. So here we've got three terms which we have to multiply to. Okay, and on the left-hand side we've got, on the right-hand side we've got two terms that we have to multiply to. Okay, now some of you may be skipping this step as you get more confident in doing these equations, but at the beginning I strongly suggest that you do show the following steps. So I'm going to show here that I'm multiplying 10 times the first term, which is 2x minus 1 over 5, okay, plus 10 times x minus 10 times 1, okay, and so now I'm going to do the same thing on the right hand side. 10 times the first term, 6x minus 13 over 5, minus 10 times 2 minus 4x over 10. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and perform these multiplications. So again, here I've got a 10. Remember, this is like 10 over 1. So when I multiply these two, I want to simplify before multiplying. This is where it becomes a lot more important, because here multiplying 10 to the numerator isn't too useful because I still have the denominator. It's much better to simplify before I multiply. So 10 over 5 simplifies to 2 over 1. So what am I left with? I'm just left with 2 times 2x minus 1. So I've eliminated the denominator. These are easy because it's just 10 times x gives me 10x, and 10 times 1 gives me 10, so minus 10. Okay, now I do the same on the other side of the equation. So here I simplify before multiplying. So 10 over 5 is the same as 2 over 1. So I'm just left with 2 times 6x minus 13. Okay, and here I simplify 10 over 10, of course, is the same as 1 over 1. Now this is where you have to be careful. I specifically put in an example like this because sometimes we forget that we've got this minus 1 here. Okay, that's multiplying the whole expression in the numerator. So you have to make sure that you keep those brackets. Okay, now it's a little easier to remember to do that because I showed this line that shows something multiplying the whole expression. Okay, if you're trying to do this in one step, this is a common mistake, forgetting to put the brackets around this term when I've got this minus 1 here. Okay, so just something to keep in mind, to really make sure you're using the brackets correctly. But at this point now, again, I've turned this pretty ugly equation with lots of denominators into one that has only integers in it. Okay, so now we solve as before. So distribute this, so 2 times 2x, 4x, 2 times negative 1, minus 2, then plus 10x minus 10, and now do the two distributions on the right hand side. So 2 times 6x is 12x, 2 times negative 13 minus 26, negative 1 times 2 minus 2, negative 1 times negative 4x becomes plus 4x. Okay, so now we simplify both sides. 4 plus 10, 14x, negative 2 minus 10, negative 12, and here 12 plus 4, 16x, and then negative 26 minus 2, negative 28. Okay, now we'll collect all the x terms on one side, all the numbers on the other. So here we've got 14x minus 16x. Here we've got negative 28 plus 12. So I'm just performing opposite operations. The plus 16x becomes minus 16x. The minus 12, and bring it to the other side, becomes plus 12. Okay, so now 14 minus 16, negative 2x, and here negative 28 plus 12 becomes negative 16. And the last step is the opposite to multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2. So negative 16 divided by negative 2 leaves me with a final answer of x equals 8. Okay, so quite a few steps in this process here, but again, it's very algorithmic, meaning you just follow the steps pretty much identically in every type of question. So if you've got fractions, step number 1 is determine the lowest common denominator. Step number 2 is to multiply both sides by that lowest common denominator. Step 3, distribute very carefully. Again, make sure you're using brackets at every stage. Then once you get to the point where your equation has no more fractions, you just solve as before. Simplify both sides, collect all the x terms to one side, all the numbers to the other side. Okay, that's it for this one.